Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The desert wind cut through the jagged canyon, whipping dust into the air like a storm of tiny knives. Navy SEAL Marcus Kellen's chest heaved, heart hammering in his ears. His team had been pinned down for almost an hour, every breath measured, every shadow a potential death sentence. And then he saw it. One of his own men sprawled motionless on the rocky ground, a dark pool of blood staining the sand. The rifle beside him was smoking, the echo of the shot still vibrating in Marcus's bones. Who took that shot? Marcus barked, his voice raw with disbelief and rage, scanning the canyon rim. Every second stretched like hours. The team had been moving in perfect formation and suddenly chaos. He could see the tension crack the faces of his teammates, their trust fracturing under the pressure of unseen danger. Then he caught a glint, just for a fraction of a second. A scope reflecting the rising sun, a shadow moving impossibly quick across the rocks. Marcus's knees hit the ground, his boots sinking into the sand. He could smell the gunpowder, the sweat, the metallic tang of blood. His hands shook, not from fear but from the betrayal of the unknown. Every instinct screamed at him that the enemy was near, but something inside whispered a more dangerous possibility. It wasn't the enemy at all. Not this time. He heard a soft, deliberate exhale from above. A figure emerged from behind a jagged boulder, small but precise, her movements unshakably confident. Her black tactical gear clung to her like a second skin. The desert sun highlighted the sharp line of her jaw, the focused glint in her eyes. She had just executed the shot that saved the team from what could have been a devastating ambush, but no one knew who she really was. Marcus forced himself to rise, voice steady despite the adrenaline still surging through him. Identify yourself. His words were firm but inside, doubt gnawed at him. He had seen many operators in action, many snipers on the field, but something about her precision, her calmness, the way she surveyed the battlefield as if she were already 3 moves ahead, it wasn't ordinary. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of dust and gunfire across the canyon. The other SEALs were frozen, half in awe, half in fear. No one had expected help, and certainly no one had expected it to come with such quiet, lethal mastery. The figure remained silent, eyes locked on Marcus as if weighing the exact moment to speak, or perhaps deciding if she even needed to. Then she lowered the rifle slowly, revealing a name patch on her vest. Marcus's jaw tightened. He squinted through the haze of sand and smoke. The patch wasn't just a name, it was a rank, one that no one had anticipated, a rank that carried authority, fear, and respect all at once. His stomach dropped. The woman who had just taken the most critical shot of his life, the one who had possibly saved every man in his unit, was not who she appeared to be. The canyon seemed to hold its breath. Dust swirled between them, sun glinting off metal and sweat, and Marcus's mind raced. Who was she? And why had no one ever told him that someone of her rank was in this operation? He stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper, but trembling with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. Tell me your rank, he demanded, each word deliberate. Her eyes flicked to him, sharp and calculating. A half-smile curved her lips, like she had been waiting for this moment. Then she spoke, 3 words that would echo in Marcus's mind far longer than any gunshot ever could. I'm Commander Vera. Marcus staggered back slightly, the weight of the revelation crashing over him. Commander. Not just a sniper. A leader, hidden in plain sight, changing everything Marcus thought he knew about this mission, this battlefield, and his own understanding of courage. The canyon wind seemed to roar in agreement, carrying the sound of an invisible battle into the hearts of men who suddenly realized that true mastery often comes in the most unexpected form. And with that, Marcus knew nothing on this mission would ever be the same. The desert had not always been a battlefield for Marcus Kellen. Weeks before the ambush, he had been in Norfolk, Virginia, training with his SEAL team, running drills until his legs burned and his lungs screamed for air. Marcus prided himself on precision, discipline, and trust. Trust that had been drilled into him since his first day in the Navy. But trust, he was beginning to realize, could be fragile, easily fractured by the weight of secrets. Vera had entered their lives quietly. No fanfare, no introductions beyond a curt nod and a firm handshake. She was assigned to the same mission, ostensibly as a support sniper, someone who would cover the team from a distance. But even then, Marcus had sensed something different about her. During training, she had moved with an almost unnatural precision, her eyes scanning the range not just for targets, but for weaknesses, patterns, and the tiniest details others missed. Most recruits had been intimidated. Marcus, however, was unsettled. Her presence seemed to pull the tension out of the air. Where others struggled with nerves, she exuded calm. Where others hesitated, she struck decisively, hitting every target in record time. Rumors began to swirl among the team, whispers of secret accolades, of missions that Marcus was not allowed to know about. Yet Vera never boasted. Never spoke beyond what was necessary. And though the team respected her skill, she remained an enigma, her rank and achievements carefully veiled. Marcus remembered the briefing the morning before deployment, the maps spread across the table, the faint smell of coffee and ink. Vera had leaned over the strategy layout, tracing potential sniper lines with a gloved finger, offering corrections with quiet authority. Marcus had bristled slightly at the intrusion. He was the mission lead on the ground. Yet the corrections were flawless, anticipatory, almost clairvoyant. His pride battled his acknowledgement. She knew more than she had revealed. Even the team noticed. Small things, the way she packed her gear, the subtle communication with eyes, the way she anticipated threats before anyone could even articulate danger. Some thought she was simply talented. Marcus began to wonder if she was something far more formidable. And yet, her demeanor never changed. Calm, collected, untouchable. A ghost in the middle of chaos. That night, under the hum of the base's fluorescent lights, Marcus couldn't sleep. His thoughts circled like vultures over unanswered questions. Why was someone of her caliber being hidden in plain sight? Why the secrecy? And why, when it mattered most, did no one seem to recognize the extraordinary presence she carried with her? The mission brief had been simple on paper. Infiltrate the canyon, extract the intel, neutralize threats. But Marcus had felt the underlying tension, the whispers of a team stretched too thin, the enemy emboldened by knowledge of the terrain. And Vera's calm had been the only anchor in his mind, the one certainty in a sea of unknowns. He recalled a moment during training when a fellow SEAL had tried to challenge her decisions. Marcus had watched as Vera's eyes met the man's, not with anger, but with a quiet, unshakable authority. She didn't need to raise her voice, her presence alone settled the room. Marcus had felt something stir then, a mixture of admiration and unease. He had never encountered someone so skilled, so unassuming, and yet so undeniably in command. And yet he didn't know her rank. Not truly. Until now, in the dust of the canyon, with the taste of gunpowder in his mouth and a fallen teammate at his feet, Marcus realized the truth had been hidden in plain sight all along. The desert had not changed, the team had not faltered yet, but the revelation of Vera's identity was a pivot. What had begun as a standard operation was now a chessboard, with pieces that Marcus did not fully understand. And in that moment he knew the mission's success, or failure, depended not only on skill, but on trust, and trust was fragile, especially when one of the strongest pieces on the board had been invisible until now. Marcus squared his shoulders, inhaled the dry, biting air, and prepared himself for the battle ahead. The canyon awaited, every shadow a question, every ridge a potential enemy. And somewhere above, Vera waited, her rifle steady, her gaze unbroken, a commander disguised as a sniper, ready to reveal just how lethal the truth could be. The canyon stretched before them like a jagged scar across the desert, sun blazing overhead, heat radiating from the rocks in waves that shimmered against the eyes. Marcus led the team cautiously, boots crunching on loose gravel, rifles raised. Every movement was deliberate, measured. Every shadow a potential threat. And somewhere above, Vera's presence hung like a silent sentinel, unseen yet undeniable. "Movement 2 o'clock," whispered Lance, the youngest SEAL, his voice tight, trembling. Marcus's heart slammed against his ribs as he swung his gaze to the ridge. Dust kicked up in a sudden violent swirl. Figures, armed, fast and precise, emerged from behind the rocks. The ambush had begun. Bullets tore through the air, ricocheting off stone with deafening cracks. Marcus felt adrenaline spike, the familiar rhythm of combat taking over. Vera's rifle cracked once, twice, her shots deliberate, each one calculating, each one hitting its mark. One enemy dropped, then another. Marcus caught himself staring, stunned at her composure. She wasn't just shooting, she was orchestrating the battlefield, controlling chaos with a calm that felt almost inhuman. He realized how dangerous it was to underestimate her, how deadly her hidden talent could be. The team scrambled for cover behind boulders, the desert wind whipping dust and smoke into their eyes. Marcus could hear Lance choking back fear, his own breaths ragged, and somewhere deep he felt a surge of guilt. This was his responsibility. Every life in his team weighed on him like a stone. And yet, watching Vera, he felt a spark of relief. Her presence had shifted the tide. Suddenly, a sharp cry split the air. One of the seals had been hit. Marcus Dove, dragging him behind a rock. Blood seeped through the man's uniform, warm and sticky, soaking Marcus's hands. Panic gnawed at the edges of his mind, but Vera's calm gaze cut through the chaos. Her eyes flicked to him, then back to the enemy, signaling a silent command: trust her, follow her lead. Bullets snapped dangerously close. Marcus returned fire, forcing himself to focus, relying on training drilled into him over years. The enemy advanced, but Vera's presence above was a wall they couldn't breach. Each shot she took disrupted their rhythm, each movement calculated, devastating. Marcus realized that this wasn't luck. It was skill, experience, and strategy fused into lethal precision. Minutes dragged like hours. Dust choked the canyon, the sun burned relentless against their necks, and yet Vera remained a calm shadow. Marcus stole another glance at her, recognizing the insignia glinting faintly on her vest in the sunlight. His heart skipped. Commander. She wasn't just a sniper, she was a leader who had been operating in plain sight, guiding them without their knowing. An explosion of rocks and dirt jolted Marcus to his senses. One enemy had slipped closer than expected, rifle raised. Marcus reacted instinctively, but Vera's voice cut through his earpiece, calm yet commanding. Left. Take cover. I've got this one. A single, precise shot rang out. The threat crumpled silently, the enemy neutralized before he could fire. Marcus's jaw dropped. Every instinct screamed admiration and disbelief. The firefight slowed, enemy retreating, leaving a haze of smoke, dust, and the acrid scent of gunfire. The team emerged from cover, shaken but alive. Marcus's mind raced, trying to process what he had just witnessed. The shots, the calm, the authority, Vera's presence had saved them. And yet, a new tension settled in his chest. The revelation of her rank had not just impressed him. It had shifted the balance of trust, control, and power within the team. Vera descended from her perch, boots silent on the rocks. She moved with precision, eyes never leaving the team. Check your wounded, she instructed, her voice calm but steel-edged. Marcus obeyed, still struggling to reconcile the fact that the woman he had assumed was just another sniper was in fact a commander, a strategist, and perhaps the most skilled operator he had ever encountered. The canyon was quiet now, save for the wind and the labored breathing of men who had faced death and survived. Marcus felt a new weight settle on his shoulders. Trust had been fractured and rebuilt in an instant. He glanced at Vera, her expression unreadable, and realized that from this moment on, the mission, and perhaps their lives, would be guided by someone whose true power had been hidden until now. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the canyon floor, and Marcus understood that the fight was far from over. Every step forward would be a test, every choice a gamble. And somewhere above, Commander Vera watched, a silent force in a battle that had only just begun. Night had fallen over the desert canyon, turning the jagged cliffs into black silhouettes against the indigo sky. Marcus sat near the makeshift campfire, knees drawn up, rifle resting across them. Around him, his team tended to wounds and checked equipment, their voices low and tense. The events of the day replayed in his mind. The ambush, the gunfire, the surreal calm of Vera in action. He could still feel the weight of her presence, her eyes scanning, calculating, commanding. Vera didn't look up immediately. She traced a finger along the sand, drawing invisible patterns as if measuring time itself. Her eyes, when they met his, were sharp, piercing, yet softened by something almost human, pain, maybe regret. Long enough, she said quietly. Long enough to know that appearances are dangerous. Long enough to understand that trust can't be given lightly. Marcus swallowed. He had expected arrogance, a litany of accolades, or a justification for secrecy. Instead, he felt the weight of her history pressing against him. You've been on missions like this? Alone. His voice was hushed, almost afraid to disturb the silence that seemed to cling to her. Yes, she admitted. But never without purpose. Every mission, every shot, every decision, I've carried the responsibility for lives I may never see again. And sometimes that means being unseen, unheard, unacknowledged. Until now. Marcus felt a pang of admiration mixed with unease. He had faced death before, had survived countless firefights, but he had never encountered someone who could command fear and respect without raising a single voice. Vera's calm was a mask, but he glimpsed the toll it took on her, the endless vigilance, the sacrifices made in silence. Why hide your rank? Marcus asked, voice softer now, almost a whisper. Why not tell us who you really are? Vera's gaze lingered on the desert horizon, the firelight flickering across her sharp features. Because in operations like this, she said slowly, rank can be a target. Authority can make people hesitate when they should act. And I've learned the hard way that perception can be more dangerous than the enemy. She paused, and for a moment, Marcus felt the ghost of vulnerability behind her stoic expression. You've earned my respect today, Marcus. You and your team showed courage under fire. That's all that matters in the field. The canyon seemed to breathe with them, shadows stretching and curling around the camp. Marcus realized he had underestimated her, not just as a sniper, but as a person who had lived in the gray areas of danger and duty for longer than he could imagine. She had chosen to remain unseen until her skill was needed most. And now, having revealed herself, she had shifted the balance of power, trust, and understanding within the team. Tell me more, Marcus whispered, curiosity and respect mingling. About you. About your missions. I need to understand the battlefield we're on, and the woman guiding us through it. Vera's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Stories have a way of being dangerous, she said, her voice a low murmur carried by the desert wind. But perhaps, some stories are meant to be shared, if only to teach those who survive. Marcus nodded, leaning back against a rock, eyes fixed on the fire. He realized that the coming days would not just test their combat skills, but their ability to trust, to adapt, and to survive under the guidance of someone who had been forged in the crucible of war. Above them, the stars glittered cold and distant, indifferent to human struggle. But in that small circle of firelight, Marcus saw the beginning of understanding, the fragile formation of trust between a SEAL and a commander who had once been invisible, and yet had always been watching. The night whispered secrets, and Marcus vowed silently. Whatever came next, he would follow her lead. He had no choice, and somehow he trusted her more than anyone else alive. The sun had barely risen over the canyon when the first warning signs appeared. A whisper of movement on the eastern ridge, a flash of metal too precise to be wind-blown. Marcus's stomach tightened. The ambush from the day before had left scars, not just on the bodies of his team, but on their confidence. He knew that the enemy would test them again, and this time they would be smarter, more ruthless. Positions. Marcus ordered, his voice sharp, cutting through the quiet morning air. SEALs scattered behind rocks, the crunch of gravel underfoot and the faint click of rifle safeties sounding like a heartbeat in the canyon. Vera moved with him, silent, almost ghost-like, eyes scanning every ridge and crevice. Her presence was commanding without a word, and Marcus felt the odd mix of reassurance and unease it always brought. Then it happened. A deafening explosion erupted from the western cliffside, throwing rocks and sand into the air. Marcus dove instinctively, pulling two of his men down. Screams mingled with the ringing of gunfire as enemies, faster, better equipped, and more coordinated than before, poured into the canyon. Marcus realized with a sinking feeling that someone had tipped them off. They were not just being attacked, they were being hunted. Vera's rifle barked sharply from above. One enemy fell, then another, her shots precise and unerring. Marcus could see the difference now. She wasn't just a sniper, she was a commander in action, orchestrating their defense with subtle hand signals and eye movements. The team moved in unison, covering each other, trusting her cues. Yet, amid the chaos, a gnawing suspicion grew in Marcus's gut. Someone close to them had betrayed their position. "Check your six." Marcus shouted to Lance and Torres, diving behind a jagged boulder. His mind raced, trying to account for every possible threat. The enemy seemed to anticipate their moves, flanking them in ways that should have been impossible. He glanced at Vera. She remained calm, methodical, almost untouchable. And yet even she couldn't hide the brief flicker of surprise when a shot whizzed perilously close to her head. Then the truth struck like a knife. One of their own team members had misled the enemy, feeding information, creating traps. Marcus's chest tightened with betrayal. Trust, the fragile bond that had kept them alive, was cracking. And with the canyon collapsing into chaos, every decision mattered. One wrong move could mean death. Vera's voice came through the earpiece, sharp and commanding. Marcus, left ridge, now. Flank them before they regroup. Her orders were crisp, efficient, leaving no room for hesitation. Marcus obeyed, feeling the rush of adrenaline as they moved, bullets cutting past them, dust and smoke filling their vision. Each movement was life or death, and Vera's guidance was the only thing keeping them coherent. A sudden scream pierced the canyon. Marcus turned to see one of their own fall. Betrayal had struck again, leaving a teammate exposed. Rage and fear collided in his chest. But Vera's presence reminded him to focus, to channel the chaos into action. She fired again, then disappeared behind a rock, her movements fluid, precise. Marcus followed, coordinating with her silently, understanding finally what it meant to operate under her command. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Sand, blood, and smoke mingled, the canyon echoing with gunfire and shouts. Marcus felt every heartbeat, every breath, every pulse of fear and determination. Then slowly the tide began to turn. Vera's orchestrated strikes disrupted the enemy, their flanking maneuvers collapsing under her calm, lethal precision. The traitor, cornered, revealed himself in a frantic, desperate attempt to escape. Marcus's jaw tightened. Justice, swift and unavoidable, was approaching. By the time the sun fully illuminated the canyon, the battlefield was quiet once more. The enemy had retreated, defeated but leaving scars that would linger in minds and bodies alike. Marcus surveyed the team, shaken, bloodied but alive. And in the center, Vera emerged, unscathed, commanding, untouchable. Marcus approached her, awe and respect mingling with anger at the betrayal. "We survived," he said, voice low. "Because of you." Vera met his gaze evenly, almost unreadable. "We survive because we trust each other, eventually." Betrayal teaches that lesson quickly. Her eyes, sharp as the rifle she wielded, softened just slightly. "And now we move forward. There's no time for hesitation. The mission isn't over." The canyon held its silence, broken only by the rustle of wind over rocks, and Marcus realized that the battlefield had changed, not just the enemy, but the way he viewed leadership, trust, and the woman who had redefined both for him. The canyon had fallen silent, but Marcus knew better than to trust the calm. Dust still hung in the air, shimmering in the midday sun, and the scent of spent gunpowder lingered like a warning. He crouched behind a jagged boulder, his mind racing. The enemy had retreated, for now, but their tactics were sophisticated, coordinated. And someone close to them had betrayed their position. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him harder than ever. Vera emerged from the shadows, her black tactical gear coated in a thin layer of dust, but her posture unyielding, eyes scanning the horizon. "We need a counterattack," she said, voice low but commanding, sharp as the edge of a blade. "We cannot wait for them to strike again. The canyon gives us the advantage if we move intelligently." Marcus nodded, kneeling beside her. "We need to cut off their retreat but also isolate the traitor. If we don't, they'll use him again." His gaze swept over the team, exhausted, shaken, but ready. He could feel Vera's confidence radiating, not overbearing but magnetic. Her presence drew focus, her calm giving clarity in chaos. Vera crouched beside him, pointing at the canyon map etched into the sandy earth. "They'll expect a frontal attack," she murmured. "We'll give them that, but our main strike will come from the eastern ridge. Cover fire from here while we flank. Timing is everything. One misstep and we lose the advantage." Her finger traced the path, precise, deliberate, a silent promise of controlled chaos. Marcus's mind raced, visualizing every move, every potential consequence. He had trained for this, yes, but Vera's insight was something else entirely. She understood terrain, psychology, and battlefield timing in a way that made her almost prescient. "How do we handle the traitor?" he asked, voice hushed. "Do we confront him first or use him to draw them in?" Vera's eyes narrowed, calculating. "We use him to reveal the enemy's strength. But he will answer for his betrayal. Justice is necessary. Hesitation is dangerous." She paused, scanning Marcus's expression. "Can I trust you to follow through?" Marcus swallowed, feeling the gravity of the moment. He knew her methods were precise, ruthless when necessary but fair. "You have my word," he said. The canyon wind carried their words across the silent rocks, as if the desert itself acknowledged the pact forming between them. Night fell again, this time deliberately quiet, allowing them to prepare. The team checked weapons, loaded magazines, whispered reassurances. Marcus watched Vera move among them, issuing subtle adjustments, her eyes catching every detail. She was not just leading, she was observing, calculating, anticipating. Every seal moved with a purpose that only made sense under her guidance. As darkness settled, Marcus felt a strange mix of admiration, tension, and unease. He had followed many leaders but none like Vera. She was a strategist, a sniper, and a commander all in one, and she had revealed her full capability only when necessary. The counterattack would be a test of trust, of skill, and of nerve. And he realized something he hadn't admitted before. He was both terrified and inspired. Vera crouched beside him one last time, whispering, "Remember, Marcus, control your fear, Let it sharpen your senses, not cloud them. Trust me, trust your team, and trust yourself. That is the only way we survive this. Marcus nodded, eyes fixed on the shadows that stretched across the canyon floor. He could feel the pulse of the mission, the heartbeat of the desert, and the silent strength of the woman beside him. The enemy thought they had the advantage, but Marcus knew the truth. The real power had always been in the unseen, the unrecognized, the silent strategist guiding the battlefield. As the team moved into position under the cover of darkness, Marcus took a deep breath. Tonight they would fight not just for survival but for justice, redemption, and the revelation that courage sometimes came in the form of someone you least expected. And in the shadows above, Commander Vera watched, ready to turn the tide. The night was almost black, broken only by the faint glow of the moon over the canyon cliffs. Marcus signaled the team into position, muscles coiled, nerves taut. Dust rose from their careful movements, blending with the chill desert air. Every step was measured, every breath quiet. The canyon, once a silent witness to chaos, now felt alive, anticipating the violence about to erupt. From her vantage point above, Vera scanned the enemy lines. Her rifle rested lightly against her shoulder, finger poised on the trigger. Her eyes narrowed, calculating trajectories, predicting responses, anticipating mistakes before they could occur. Marcus watched her through the scope of his own weapon, heart pounding. He had fought alongside elite operators before, but her precision, her command, her control of the battlefield, even unseen, was unlike anything he had ever witnessed. A sudden flare of movement on the eastern ridge announced the start. The enemy had been caught off guard, but Marcus knew better than to underestimate them. He gave the signal, and the seals erupted from cover, bullets whizzing and ricochets cracking off rock. Explosions threw up clouds of sand and stone, the air thick with the smell of gunpowder. The counterattack was underway. Vera's rifle barked from above, each shot taking a precise toll. One by one the enemy fell, their formations collapsing under her calculated fire. Marcus ducked behind a boulder, heart hammering, adrenaline surging as he advanced with his team. He caught sight of the traitor amid the chaos, a glint of betrayal in his eyes, and Marcus's pulse spiked. This man had endangered every life in the canyon. There would be no mercy. But just as the tide seemed to turn, the enemy launched a desperate counteroffensive. Flanking fire erupted from a narrow crevice, and Marcus felt the sting of a near miss across his shoulder. Shouts and screams echoed through the canyon, blending with the sharp crack of rifle fire. Chaos threatened to unravel their plan, and Marcus realized the full weight of the stakes. One mistake could destroy them all. Vera's voice came crisp through the earpiece. "Left ridge. Take cover. Focus fire." Her calm, unwavering tone anchored Marcus, forcing him to steady his aim, to rely on training and instinct. He followed her commands, taking precise shots, moving with the rhythm of the battle she orchestrated from above. The SEALs responded in unison, their confidence growing under her guidance. In a sudden, almost cinematic moment, the traitor faltered, revealing his position as he tried to escape. Marcus didn't hesitate. He neutralized the threat with a clean, controlled shot, the man collapsing at his feet. Relief and fury collided in his chest. Trust had been broken and restored in the span of a heartbeat. Above, Vera's final series of shots ended the remaining threat. She descended from her perch with fluid grace, rifle still poised, eyes scanning for any hidden danger. Marcus met her gaze, awe and gratitude overwhelming him. "We did it," he said, voice hoarse. "Because of you." Vera's lips curved in a faint smile, the first sign of warmth Marcus had seen. "Because we trusted each other," she said. "And because courage isn't about rank or recognition, it's about acting when it matters most." Her eyes softened slightly as she glanced around the canyon at the survivors. "This mission isn't over. But tonight, we survived." Marcus exhaled, letting the tension drain from his body as he looked at the desolate, bloodied canyon. The enemy had been defeated, the traitor confronted, and the team united in a way that words could not capture. He realized the depth of what he had witnessed. Vera's rank, her skill, her leadership. It had been a revelation that changed everything. As dawn began to tint the horizon, Marcus felt a profound shift within himself. He had faced danger, betrayal, and death, but under Vera's guidance he had also witnessed courage, strategy, and the quiet power of a woman who had always been more than she appeared. And in the silent light of morning, he understood that the mission had not only tested their bodies but their trust, their hearts, and their very understanding of what it meant to lead. The canyon, once a battlefield of fear and chaos, now held the promise of resolution, and the knowledge that some warriors like Vera carried the weight of worlds in silence, waiting for the right moment to reveal their true power. The canyon was quiet now, the echoes of gunfire replaced by the whisper of wind against jagged rocks. Bodies of the enemy lay scattered, reminders of the night's chaos. Marcus moved slowly among his team, checking for injuries, offering terse reassurances. The adrenaline that had driven them through the fight was fading, leaving exhaustion, pain, and a raw, pervasive sense of relief. Vera stood apart on a small rise, scanning the horizon as if she could still see danger lurking in the shadows. Marcus approached her cautiously, unsure whether to speak or merely observe. "You did more than save us," he said finally, voice low. "You changed everything out there. Not just with your shots but with the way you led us, silently." Vera's eyes softened slightly, the faintest shadow of a smile crossing her face. "I only guided," she said. "You and your team acted. Leadership isn't about being seen, it's about ensuring the mission survives. Sometimes that means remaining in the shadows until it matters most." Her gaze swept over Marcus, steady and unwavering. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the right moment. Marcus nodded, taking in her words. He realized that the canyon had not just tested their skills, it had tested their trust. And though betrayal had struck hard, it had also forced the team to rely on each other more deeply than ever. The bonds forged in fire and fear were stronger than any rank or reputation. He watched the team gather around Vera, injured but resilient, their exhaustion mingling with quiet pride. Small gestures, hands on shoulders, nods of gratitude, shared glances, spoke louder than words ever could. Marcus felt a surge of respect, not just for Vera, but for the resilience of his comrades. They had survived a nightmare together and emerged more united, tempered by fire, ready for whatever lay ahead. The traitor had been dealt with, justice served swiftly, but Marcus knew the emotional wounds would take longer to heal. Betrayal left a scar deeper than any bullet could. Yet, amid the lingering tension, he sensed a quiet shift, understanding, empathy, and a shared determination to move forward. Vera's revelation of her true rank, her calm mastery, and her unyielding presence had altered the dynamics of the team forever. As dawn crept over the canyon walls, Marcus sat on a rock near the fire pit, hands wrapped around his rifle, mind replaying the events of the night. Every shot, every command, every breath seemed etched into his memory. And he realized something profound. Survival wasn't just about skill, it was about trust, clarity, and the courage to act in the moments that demanded it most. Vera descended from her perch, her movements fluid and purposeful. She joined him silently, settling beside him without a word. For the first time since the battle, Marcus felt a measure of peace. Not because the fight was over, but because he understood the force that had guided them through the chaos. She had been more than a sniper, more than a commander, she had been a guardian, unseen until the perfect moment. "Thank you," he said quietly, glancing at her. "For everything. For trust, for leadership, for seeing what we couldn't." Vera's gaze met his, steady, assessing, yet tinged with warmth. "You did what mattered," she replied. "You and your team acted when it counted. Recognition isn't always necessary, Marcus. Survival is reward enough. And tonight, you proved yourselves worthy." The canyon stretched before them, sun rising slowly, painting the rocks in shades of gold and red. Marcus felt a quiet awe, a reverence for the resilience of men and women shaped by war, and the subtle strength of a leader who had shown him that courage could come in forms he had never imagined. As the team gathered their gear and prepared to move forward, Marcus realized that the battle had forged more than survival. It had forged trust, understanding, and bonds that would endure beyond the canyon, beyond the mission, and beyond the limits of fear. And in that moment, he knew the world had shifted, not with the roar of gunfire, but with the quiet, unyielding presence of Commander Vera. The canyon was alive again, but this time with the heavy silence of anticipation rather than chaos. Marcus crouched behind a jagged boulder, heart hammering, eyes scanning the rocky horizon. The enemy had regrouped, and intelligence suggested they had one last desperate push planned. He could feel it in the air, the tension thick like static before a storm. Vera perched above, silent and unmoving, her rifle resting lightly against her shoulder. Marcus's gaze met hers, and in that moment he understood. The final confrontation wouldn't just test strength or skill, it would test trust, timing, and resolve. The canyon had been a proving ground, but this would be the true measure of their team's cohesion. Suddenly, movement, too coordinated, too precise. The enemy was approaching, using the shadows and rocks to their advantage. Marcus signaled the team, taking cover and steadying his rifle. Adrenaline surged as bullets ripped through the air, kicking up dust and pebbles. Vera's shots cracked like thunder, precise and lethal, taking out key threats with surgical accuracy. Marcus moved with her rhythm, trusting her guidance implicitly, following the silent command in her gaze. Amid the chaos, Marcus spotted the traitor's final act. He had tried to alert the enemy to a hidden position. Rage flared within Marcus, but Vera's voice cut through the comms, calm and commanding. Focus. Let the enemy reveal themselves. Timing is your ally. Marcus swallowed the fury, forcing discipline into his movements, trusting the woman who had already reshaped his understanding of leadership. Then, as the enemy made a desperate charge, Vera's eyes flicked to Marcus. Now, she barked. The team executed a perfectly coordinated counter, striking from unexpected angles. The enemy collapsed under the combined firepower, disarray and panic replacing their earlier confidence. The canyon echoed with the finality of gunfire, dust rising in clouds, the smell of spent rounds and sweat filling the air. Marcus moved forward, adrenaline ebbing into exhaustion, and for the first time, allowed himself to fully take in what had happened. The enemy lay defeated, the canyon eerily still. His teammates were shaken but alive, leaning on each other, sharing nods of relief and quiet gratitude. And above them, Vera descended with the fluid precision of a predator, rifle lowered but eyes ever watchful. He approached her, words failing at first. You led us through this. You saved us. Every single one of us. Marcus's chest rose and fell with ragged breaths, awe mixing with gratitude. Vera's expression softened, almost imperceptibly, but the weight of command still radiated from her like an invisible shield. Not me alone, she said. You acted, you trusted, you survived. That is what matters. Leadership doesn't exist in a vacuum. It lives in those who follow just as courage exists in those who act. She glanced at each member of the team, pride hidden in her calm demeanor. Today, you proved that trust can overcome fear and unity can overcome betrayal. The canyon seemed to breathe with them, the wind carrying the faint scent of victory. Marcus felt a shift within himself, a recognition of something larger than individual skill, a respect for the subtle power of presence, patience and precision. Vera's revelation of her rank had changed everything, but her actions had changed him in ways words could not capture. As the first light of dawn touched the canyon walls, Marcus realized the mission had transformed more than the terrain. It had transformed him, the team and their understanding of courage, trust and leadership. And in that quiet, sunlit moment, he understood why she had remained hidden until the perfect time. Vera looked at Marcus one last time, eyes piercing yet calm. Remember this, Marcus. True strength is often unseen, and the right action at the right time can change everything. Never forget that. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight and clarity of her words settle deep within him. The canyon had been a battlefield, but it had also been a classroom. And Commander Vera had taught them all a lesson in courage, precision, and trust that would linger long after the echoes of gunfire faded. The canyon was finally silent. The enemy was gone, the traitor confronted, and the dust of battle settled like a fragile veil over the rocky terrain. Marcus moved carefully among his team, inspecting injuries and offering quiet reassurances. The adrenaline of combat had faded, replaced by exhaustion and relief. Each man and woman bore the marks of survival, the cuts, bruises and raw edges of fear, but all were alive, and all had learned something about trust, courage and leadership. Vera descended from her vantage point with fluid grace, rifle slung over her shoulder. Her movements were deliberate, calm and unhurried, as if she had anticipated every event, every shot, every betrayal before it occurred. Marcus approached her, heart heavy with respect and admiration. You changed everything out there, he said quietly, voice thick with emotion. Not just with your skill but with the way you led us. You saved lives today, my team, my men and me. Vera's eyes softened, the faintest trace of warmth breaking through her calm exterior. I only guided, she said. You and your team acted. Courage is not measured by rank or recognition, it is measured by action. By doing what is necessary when it matters most. Her gaze swept over the canyon, lingering on the defeated enemy and the traitor who was now in custody. Justice has been served, she added quietly. But remember this, survival, trust and teamwork are victories in themselves. Marcus's thoughts drifted back over the past hours, the ambush, the betrayal, the counterattack, the near-death moments. And yet, amid the chaos, he realized the most profound lesson was not about firepower or strategy. It was about the unseen strength of the woman who had been guiding them all along. Commander Vera had been more than a sniper. She had been a mentor, a protector, and a beacon of calm in a storm of violence. The team gathered around the fire pit, the warmth of flames offering comfort against the desert chill. Muted conversations carried over the crackle of fire, small gestures of camaraderie, quiet apologies and nods of respect. Marcus watched them, heart swelling. They had faced death, betrayal and fear, and they had survived, stronger and more united than ever. He turned back to Vera, noticing the insignia of her true rank glinting faintly in the firelight. Commander. Not just a sniper, not just a team member, she had been the hidden force that had orchestrated every critical moment. Marcus felt a mixture of awe and gratitude, understanding now why she had concealed her identity until it mattered most. The revelation had been a gift, not a secret, a test of their courage, adaptability and trust. "Thank you, Commander," Marcus said, voice steady now, infused with sincerity. "For everything. For leading, for guiding, and for showing us the kind of strength we didn't even know we had." Vera's expression softened further, almost imperceptibly. "You've proven yourselves," she replied. "Not just as soldiers but as people capable of trust, courage and unity under pressure. That is the measure of any mission's success." Her eyes lingered on Marcus for a moment, and he felt a connection beyond words, a shared understanding forged in the fire of combat, betrayal and survival. The sun rose higher, painting the canyon walls in warm shades of gold and red. Marcus felt a profound sense of closure, a recognition that the mission had tested more than physical skill, it had tested character, trust and resilience. The canyon was quiet now, a silent witness to courage and justice, to bonds forged in chaos, and to the revelation of a leader who had remained unseen until the perfect moment. Marcus exhaled, letting the weight of the past hours settle into a calm resolve. The battle was over. The team had survived. And Commander Vera, the sniper who had revealed her true rank, had ensured that every life counted, every action mattered, and every lesson endured. The canyon held its silence, not as a tomb of fear or death, but as a testament to courage, trust, and the quiet, undeniable power of leadership. Marcus watched Vera walk toward the ridge, rifle on her shoulder, confident and untouchable, and realized the truth. Some heroes were forged in shadows, waiting for the exact moment to change everything. And today she had.